Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be discussing the controversy. I don't know if you can consider it controversy or the opinion that's been kind of going around over the last kind of couple weeks kind of thing. It's actually been going a bit before that, but the post that I'm going to talk about came out last week, going over both Universes Beyond, Commander, and other stuff in general. Now, typically I don't do opinion pieces or anything like that, so I apologize if, this is a bit unusual, but I feel like kind of putting my hand up to discuss something that I do feel kind of strongly about. And I understand that, I'm not necessarily going to see eye to eye with everyone. And this, is a lot more in depth than can potentially be covered within a, 30-minute video. But just try and keep the comments down below civil. And I will say straight up, I am a pig and I eat slop. I absolutely love Universes Beyond. I absolutely love Commander. But, there's a lot of intricacies here that I'm going to be discussing. So this is the post here from Jeffery White, who's an Magic the Gathering tournament professional. That's posted up on September 30 on Twitter. And it's about competitive Magic the Gathering. And he wrote about what it feels like to be a competitive Magic the Gathering player for the last 5 to 6 years. Notably, it is for the last 5 to 6 years, right? So it's not just immediately this year or taking into account next year. It is what it's felt like for the last 5 to 6, and definitely focus around that competitive aspect. So I'll go and I'll read through the post and everything for you guys who haven't read it. You have a favorite restaurant that you've dined at for many years now. You love it because they serve high quality food and are staffed by people who care about making the experience of eating at the restaurant good. One day you notice a new item on the menu, slop. What's this for? You ask the waiter. It's for the pigs. Pigs eat slop. So keep in mind, this is going to be a very, very extreme, extreme metaphor. Over time, a second flavor of slop shows up on the menu, then a third. Then you notice that some of the old menu items you used to love now come with a non-optional slide of slop. All menu items are now designed with the pigs in mind, on the chance that one of them might try their hand at human food. The quality and preparation of the human food, what's left on the menu, also starts to degrade. When you ask the restaurant staff about it, they inform you that they no longer have the resources to make sure that the human food is prepared correctly. They're too busy making slop. You notice that some of the restaurant patrons that you've become good friends with have stopped showing up. You stop showing up. You're upset with the direction the restaurant is taking and post about it on social media. You get two types of replies. First of all, I am a pig and I eat slop. Second, the restaurant is doing well and has so many patrons. How can you be upset? Getting more customers into the restaurant has to be a good thing. The second comment is particularly frustrating because it naively assumes that the entire restaurant clientele wants the same things. But you don't want 5 flavors of slop. You want human food that is prepared by people who are passionate about food and who care about the experience of dining at the restaurant being a good one. It's something you used to be able to get here but can't anymore. You don't care if there are more pigs eating at the restaurant now. You like things just fine when there are no pigs, and contrary to the sentiment, things have gotten worse for you as the restaurant has grown, not better. Now, all right, so obviously there's, it's a very kind of charged metaphor here, talking about the fact that, I'll go to the next slide. So to start with, this is not about Universes Beyond, but people have taken this to apply it towards Universes Beyond as well. So I will kind of talk about Universes Beyond later on, but it is actually about Commander. So Jeffrey's here, it says here, to me, slop is the trend of designing the game to appeal to the Commander mindset. Some people want Magic to be a board game to play with friends on a Friday that isn't too complicated. Others want Magic to be a low variance, complicated skill game being played for money. So keep in mind that this part here, the second option here, is what Jeffrey is and what he's kind of talking about in regards to that. The competitive scene, where it's that low variance, complicated skill game, as opposed to it being a casual board game that you're playing with friends and stuff. So obviously this is kind of talking about the fact that slowly over the last few years, Wizards has started designing stuff more towards Commander, not just in regards to Commander products, but in regards to standard products as well as, even like the Modern Horizon stuff and everything, just designing stuff more towards Commander, including kind of putting Commander aimed things within the actual, the standard level sets that people are using in their competitive level, games. So as I said, I am a pig and I eat slop. I absolutely love Commander and I love Universes Beyond, and I am happy about the fact that they do design things towards both of those. I do understand the point that Jeffrey's trying to get at here, and the fact that, it feels like the game that, him and other people who aim towards playing standard and, playing in that more competitive scene and stuff, the game has slowly kind of shifted away from having that focus and everything. And, there's definitely been a big shift away from standard, which I'll talk about in a bit as well. So I'm going to touch on the Magic the Gathering community from my perspective, Commander, and Universes Beyond overall. So before I start, I'm going to call this out now because I think that's important, is that people are using this and then using it as more gatekeeping, right? Saying about how, first of all, this guy up here says that people who play Magic because they got into it because of their favorite favorite IP joining, they're not real players. They wouldn't have needed their favorite IP slop on a product to come to Magic the Gathering, which I just hate this. I hate the fact that, saying someone came from whatever, Universes Beyond, and then came across to Magic. It's just the most gatekeeping thing, right? Like, people who come across from Magic to Magic because of, Doctor Who joining or whatever, are just as valid as players and just as valid as, just they're spending just as much. And they're, that doesn't mean that the game should ignore them just because they weren't playing Magic prior to whatever coming across. And it's okay to definitely be frustrated about, people buying certain products, because then Wizards see that people buy those products and then like, yeah, let's make more of that. I understand that. And that frustration, however, should be directed towards Wizards of the Coast and their decisions, not towards these people. And, dividing the community into these pro or anti Universes Beyond or Commander players just ends up causing it more harm, and it doesn't get anywhere. It's not constructive. It's not going to help, shift anything at Wizards by just attacking your fellow players at all. So what is the Commander slop, first of all? So Commander slop is basically, Commander has significantly influenced how Wizards of the Coast designs cards for both standard and eternal formats now, as of the last few years, since basically the pandemic, right? Since 2020. To make standard legal legends viable Commanders, Wizards of the Coast often increase their power level, contributed to power creep, because they need to have these, they release the Final Fantasy set, for example. They released the Final Fantasy set. They want Vivi in there. They want Vivi to be potentially Commander viable as well. So therefore, they have to make him a bit more power creep within the standard level set. There's also more of these high cost spells that are more viable in Commander than standard, and they're very unlikely to ever be played in standard. Obviously, then that affects design choice as well. Designing most legends as potential commanders also changes the set dynamics, especially in sets with many legendary creatures, like for example the Final Fantasy one as well. And then some power creep is to be expected, right? Like, power creep's always going to be there, but then once you start power creeping and then you have to power creep people's favorite characters so that way they're potentially viable, then it just becomes more impactful on the actual set. So Commander has grown into the largest format, right? It's the largest format by far now, for many different reasons. And that means that, its growth into becoming that largest format has therefore shaped many of the current issues. Many players, they want Magic now to be this casual social game enjoyed with their friends. They want to, pick up their Commander deck and head down for Friday night Commander and stuff. Now, that's not to say that there's not players who therefore are a bit disappointed that, their local store's not running Friday night standard or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, that still exists, and I can understand that potential, but there is obviously going to be, therefore, those people who just want to play Commander, and they outnumber the people who want to play standard by a significant amount now. And to be honest, that was Magic's original purpose. Magic was originally designed to be a fun, friendly game. It was inspired by board games. Jeffrey says here about, some people want Magic to be a board game to play with friends. Yes, they do. In fact, Richard Garfield, the designer of Magic, specifically wanted that. He wanted Magic to be this casual experience to complement the D&D sessions, and not necessarily as a competitive esport. Obviously, it being a competitive esport, it's still going to happen, and that's not to say that that's not a viable way to play. If you want to play that and you want to play in standard and progress through standard like that, definitely go ahead. but it was originally designed to be a casual experience to complement Dungeons and Dragons sessions. So now, as I said, I understand the concerns, and I definitely, have I put my feels out towards the people who are feeling, the issues here. The game definitely feels different for many long-time players, and designing for Commander does impact both standard and Commander formats. In fact, it impacts both of them negatively, which is going to sound probably dumb. You're going to look at that and be like, what? How is designing for Commander going to impact Commander negatively? But it does. So one of the big things was back with Nadu, right? Nadu was in Modern Horizons 3 and was an absolutely pushed to hell level card and released in a modern level set, not in a not a standard level set, but also not within a commander deck. And then he ends up going and impacting modern by heaps, right? But he was designed for commander play and then released within a modern level set. But it just means that there's this incredibly powerful, casual focused commander card that is now warping a whole format. And that's the same with Vivi. Vivi is very similar. I think that Vivi's kind of dropped off a little bit now, but it's still an incredibly powerful card. And, depending on what they release in the next couple of years, we could easily see Vivi coming back a lot within standard. There's also these casual focused cards that are releasing alongside standard that are therefore taking up like the rare and mythic slots, reducing some standard focused tools that they could potentially get there. There's cards obviously releasing with standard that are aimed towards more than 1v1s, right? Like the ones that have each opponent will do this, or goad, right? And then there's also, many high-level spells, high-cost spells that are just unplayable in standard getting released. And then onto the other one, how it impacts Commander negatively. Again, they're designing for Commander, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't negatively impact Commander. So it means that they are, instead of them designing around other things and then people find fun tools and then bring them from standard over into Commander, instead things are just designed for it. So there's some cards that are just feeling forced or repetitive. Like nearly every set has a new doubler of some kind. Like, there was Starfield, Chorus or something like that within Edge of Eternities. There was, I think there was like two different versions that there was one. There was one that doubles counters again within Edge of Eternities. There's a whole bunch of things that just doubling triggers or doubling counters or something like that, just released in nearly every set now. There's Wizards of the Coast, avoiding pushing standard cards too high, which then leads into over-designed commander cards instead. So, they don't want to push them to be too strong within standard, so therefore they end up over-designing them. And then, there's also the fact that because we're not getting, just a full commander sets or anything, they have to release those within standard level sets. And then it becomes less about discovering fun commanders or finding fun commanders that are released within standard and just meant to be standard legal, and then ends up becoming the more ones that are handed towards you, like Vivi or Voja or like Cosmic Spider-Man, the ones that are clearly designed around Commander, that are there for 5-color Commander with set mechanic. I like those, right? I still like them, but that doesn't mean that they're not boring when every single set comes out with them. So what's the solution here? There's not really going to be a solution, right? As long as Commander is still the dominant format, they are still going to design around Commander, and they're still going to release a whole bunch of Commander designed cards within standard level sets. It's not impossible. However, this isn't new, right? This has always existed. There's always been those casual focused cards released within sets. However, previously it was designed for kitchen table Magic, and now instead it's designed for Commander. I think that, the solution would be, in my opinion, releasing a Commander focused set each year, a Commander Legends, a Commander Masters, something like that. Therefore, instead of having every standard level set having to have, say, 40, let's say 40%. That's obviously, I'm just pulling a number out of my butt. 40% of cards designed towards Commander. Instead, you could put that down to 20% and then, other 20% go within a Commander Legends or whatever. Faster and firmer bans as well are definitely required. I do think that sometimes they hold off on bans for too long. Stuff like the Monstrous Rage, for example. Not necessarily Vivi, because I do understand they wanted to wait a little bit to see how the changes from the rotation and stuff like that happen and how they change the format. But I do think that they do need to take faster and firmer bans and then therefore unbans as well to kind of slow down these archetype warping cards. But to be honest, times change. The game's going to evolve with their player base, and Commander is what people want at the moment. And Wizards is always going to prioritize whatever is popular and profitable. And it's understandable that people will feel left behind by if they're playing other formats, and seeing their game that they're playing get slowly slopized. You've got, like, say, more slop introduced and stuff like that, as they phrased it. It's obviously going to be disappointing, but it's going to unfortunately happen. There's not much that can happen. However, the biggest thing here is just constructive feedback. The constructive feedback of, hey, we don't like the way you're kind of, aiming towards this or changing this or something like that, is going to be more helpful than coming out and calling it, slop or attacking Mark Rosewater or whoever about it. It's not going to guarantee change, but being unhappy, discussing that in a civil manner, and if you are really that unhappy, vote with your wallet. Don't buy sets, buy singles. You can still buy singles, and therefore you're not even supporting Wizards because you're supporting whoever bought those singles, right? Like, there's certain amounts of culpability that people have to take if they're complaining about this and then also going and purchasing sets. So just keep in mind that you can vote with your wallet, and that's the number one way to potentially influence things, and just provide that feedback, and just keep in mind that we can potentially influence change by discussing it in a more civil manner. So I do also think that Commander is more of like a scapegoat here, right? Like, people are blaming Commander, and don't get me wrong, Commander focus and Commander influencing designs around cards is going to be a big part of it. But I don't think that that's the only issue. And I think that the issues run way deeper than that. When you look at Standard, getting a standard level deck that is decent and stuff is insanely expensive. So instead of that, people will then and after the pandemic, essentially, like, the pandemic really hurt Standard because, there's rotations that happened during it. There was lost events, people not buying product and stuff like that. So some cards were more expensive. Therefore, Magic Arena ends up taking over, and therefore people can go play Standard and they can enjoy Standard there without that, $50 price tag for one card, when it's just craft a mythic from it or something. In person, people are much preferring, playing a casual, more expressive format that appeals to many players. But because they can therefore go home and they can play Standard, they can rank up Standard at home and stuff like that, easily progress through it that way, instead of having to grind it out in person. They can instead go play their fun format in person. Slower ban responses, as I said before, definitely, mean that there's dominant cards like Monstrous Rage is the specific one that I'm talking about here, not necessarily Vivi. Monstrous Rage, and then that emerge, and then they discourage players from going to play. The high cost, as I said, and then also just on top of that, the 6 to 7 standard sets per year can definitely kind of overwhelm players, and they hurt that format stability, as well as the rotation, right? Like, they've changed that recently, so that rotation was longer from memory, like sets were standard legal for longer, and that's a great step. So hopefully that kind of helps. All right. Next, into the what is Universes Beyond slop. So Universes Beyond has become a massive success for Magic the Gathering. Anyone who says otherwise is delusional, because it is absolutely insanely. And, the majority of players have no problems with Universes Beyond. You see all those people who are out there on Reddit and stuff like that complaining about it and everything. They are the vocal minority. Most players do enjoy Universes Beyond, and most products within the Universes Beyond line have hit sale targets and are just hugely popular. It's a way for them to bring in new players and lapsed players, right? Like, people who played Magic and then quit Magic. Therefore, they see that players are coming, and they're releasing Doctor Who. absolutely love Doctor Who. I'm going to start playing Magic because I love Doctor Who. I used to love Magic. Let's go into it. So, you know, anyone who like, if your argument for they should do less Universes Beyond is people don't like Universes Beyond, that's wrong. It's not like you're not going to get anywhere by trying to say stuff like that because it's just false. So this is the, you know, future of Magic the Gathering from Universes Beyond. This was posted by Mark Rosewater. He talks about a number of different players for Universes Beyond, right? So he talks about new players brought in by Universes Beyond have a healthy transition rate, which means that they continue to play in Magic in multiverse sets. So they come in to play Universes Beyond Final Fantasy. Let's say take Final Fantasy, because the amount of players at my LGS who started because of Final Fantasy and are still playing and, you know, loved Edge of Eternities and stuff like that, just keep playing is huge. And they said here, you know, it's a hurdle beginners have to get over, and many players just who exit just don't get over it. You know, it's a great way to get people into the game. The biggest influx of new players from Universes Beyond is not players who never played Magic, but actually lapsed players, aka people who once played Magic but drifted away for various reasons. As I said, you know, people come back to Magic because of it. And then the vast majority of Universes Beyond sales aren't to new or lapsed players, but rather existing Magic players. Again, that's not necessarily saying everyone likes it, but the vast majority do. Now, obviously, you know, this is Mark Rosewater saying it, so there could be, you know, some kind of, you know, we don't have the whole data, but from my experience, this all matches up. It's people coming back to Magic because they enjoy Universes Beyond, and, you know, Doctor Who's here. I love Doctor Who. I'm going to start playing because of it. New players who are like, hey, they've got Final Fantasy here. I love Final Fantasy. Let me start playing. And, you know, people who are already playing Magic and absolutely want to be able to experience, you know, I want to play my Doctor Who deck and I was already playing Magic beforehand because I love Doctor Who, and now they're bringing my favorite series into this. So one of the big arguments with Universes Beyond is that it's just a cash grab, and I absolutely hate this because it's a big criticism that people have towards Universes Beyond, but I don't feel it's a cash grab. To me, a cash grab, and the definition down here, cash grab is a term for a product, service, or activity that is primarily designed to quickly generate money, often implying a lack of quality, substance, or genuine intent beyond profit. I completely disagree with this. If you watch the developers, like the interviews around this, they just have the huge passion. If you look at all the cards, a lot of the cards, there are just really well crafted, capturing the flavor of the world or the characters just authentically. Like, you play again, I'm keeping on bringing up Doctor Who because that was like the one that kind of brought me back into it. I bring up Doctor Who because it's just like the flavor is off the charts. I love it. Like, you know, River Song's card, where her whole thing in the show is that her timeline is backwards to the Doctor, and you experience her timeline backwards essentially. But so they kind of, you know, bring that into the game by having it so that you draw from the bottom of your deck instead. Like, it just captures it so well. And I think this just, obviously, you know, they're designed to sell, but that doesn't mean that I think that they lack any quality or substance. I think that it's beyond a cash grab. I do think that they are pushing it too far, but that doesn't mean that I think that it's a cash grab. And like the Avatar The Last Airbender set coming up just feels very flavorful and very mechanically interesting so far. And I know what you're thinking, and you've probably already half typed it, is about Spider-Man. I'm a huge Marvel fan, so I was a target audience for this, but I do feel that it fell short a lot. And I believe that, you know, it shouldn't have gone to print in the current state that it was in. There was just so many different issues that impacted it. And I do think that it ended up being basically what everyone hates about Universes Beyond. You know, the fact that there was no arena or online support makes me think that that helped influence the way they designed the cards. It was originally a smaller set that they didn't decided to expand out, and therefore it just ends up being like, you know, like there's clearly just a whole bunch of chaff in it. It's the standard level restrictions that we talked about before here, with like limited design space and stuff. The legendary characters ended up just feeling, you know, underwhelming, and I feel that they lacked that flavor a lot. And then the new mechanics were just kind of re-flavored versions, right? Like Mayhem is just a re-flavored, re-fixed version of of Madness, and web slinging is just a fixed version of Prowl, or like a similar version of Prowl, essentially. Like, it's not innovative. It just feels like, a yeah, it just feels like it's a set that wasn't designed very well, and I don't think it should have gone to print the way it is. However, this does not apply to every single Universes Beyond set, because people are looking at this and they're like, look, Universes Beyond sucks. But then you got to look at Final Fantasy. Like, these are the two opposite sides of the spectrum. Final Fantasy was insanely flavorful, insanely well done, an absolute smash. Even beyond the people who actually love Final Fantasy, there was just a whole bunch of players who just loved the cards, and they were just very well designed. So into this like standard Universes Beyond, because I think that that's a part that people are going to bring up here as well, is that I have no issues with Universes Beyond being standard legal. Universes Beyond being standard legal, I'm perfectly okay with. However, obviously that ends up being able to potentially limit the flavor and the creativity of those products, and there's only so much you can kind of push cards in standard before they end up just making it feel like it's a commander focused instead. And without dedicated commander products coming alongside it, for example, there was no commander products alongside the Spider-Man set, it ends up kind of losing some of that flavor, and it means that the standard set has to carry more of that load, right? Like, I think that the Avatar set will be okay because of the fact that they're bringing out the Jumpstart packs alongside it, and then they can put the commander focus stuff into those Jumpstart packs. So, my main concern is about there being 6 to 7 6 to 7 standard sets per year. Is just too much, and especially with Universes Beyond added to the mix, right? Like, next year we've got 7 standard level sets, and 4 of them are going to be Universes Beyond. That's just too much, and I'm a pig, and this is just too much slop. I don't think that over half of next year's set should be Universes Beyond at all. I think that 2 Universes Beyond sets per year should be the maximum, plus maybe like a Universes Beyond Commander deck release as well, like like the Fallout, the Doctor Who kind of ones. Now, while Universes Beyond is in demand, it shouldn't overshadow Universes Within content. I don't think that in a certain year there should be more Universes Beyond sets, more Universes Beyond product coming out than Universes Within product. And I'm okay with Secret Layers being Universes Beyond, right? Like, Universes Beyond being in Secret Layers, I don't count them as like, a product release for the year. That's just a fun crossover thing that they can do on the Secret Layer website. I have no issues with that, as long as those cards are therefore available later on, like how they're going to bring the PlayStation 1s to your WPNs and stuff like that. As long as they're not restricted just to Secret Layer, it's fine. So the bottom line here is that just balancing that Universes Beyond and the original Magic content to just keep the game's identity intact is going to be important. Right. So this is also after, like, I think it was the next day. No, a couple days later, Jeffrey posted this as well. So there's been a lot of discussion around my post about competitive MTG. Inevitably, some people who disagreed with the points I'm making have gone on to say things that I don't agree with. Oh, sorry. People who agreed with the points I'm making went on to say some things that I don't agree with. So I'd like to make this clear. I think gatekeeping is silly. Magic is for everyone. See, I completely disagree with that, because in his original post, that was the most gatekeepy post that he could have had. If he didn't want his original post to sound gatekeepy, he could have chose anything except for calling people who enjoy Commander pigs who enjoy slop. Yeah, that's just my opinion, though. I think this is a lot of backpedaling with this part here. But either way, people who want to engage with Magic in a more casual way are not doing it wrong. In fact, it's a very fun and frankly healthy way to play the game. But so much of what I like about the game, in brackets, judge program, format health, storytelling via blocks, etc., has been sacrificed. See, I completely disagree with this, because the judge program and the storytelling via blocks Commander has had no influence on those. It has been clear from so many people that, and product data, that storytelling via blocks was an issue, and people did not enjoy staying in the same, plane for multiple sets in a row. Now, that doesn't mean that the storytelling hasn't suffered, but that's not necessarily, linked. You can still do great storytelling within one set or 2 sets that are interlinked or something like that. And I do think that bringing back, not necessarily blocks, but like 2 sets in a row in the same plane would be okay. or just planning it so that we revisit the same planes more often. And the judge program, that had nothing to do with Commander, like, and the format health. The format health does kind of, because of the fact that Commander's influencing, you know, the sets, but then also the format health, it also comes down to people like Wizards not doing bans often enough or adjusting it enough, right? In the name of this demographic, allocating resources away from competitive play to focus on this demographic, and has been saddening. But they're doing that because that's the way people want to play as well, right? Like, it's the way that people want to play is Commander, and it's not necessarily because of endless growth or anything like that. It's just people love Commander and enjoying Commander, and unfortunately that means that competitive play does suffer because of it. But I don't think that it necessarily has to be like, I think that there's a middle of the road, a middle that we can meet in with competitive, therefore, you know, being, having more tuned around it and being okay, while also being able to design for Commander and being able to have, you know, that Commander stuff continue. The Magic has meant a lot to me. I'm sure it's meant a lot to a lot of people who have supported what I was expressing in my allegory. I can't pronounce that word. But please make sure that your frustration is not misplaced towards those who want to enjoy this game their way. See, I still think that this is hugely backpedaling, and I don't agree with like the points that he's pointed out here with the judge program and the storytelling via blocks, when it's shown that like the second and third sets in a block didn't sell as well. But, you know, I do agree that there is a middle area that we can meet at between, you know, designing for Commander, designing for Universes Beyond, designing for competitive and stuff. But that's it for today, guys. As I said, you know, I'm a pig and I eat slop, but I understand not everyone wants slop. And I think that there's too much slop at the moment. Whether it's Commander slop or whether it's Universes Beyond slop, take your pick. Either way, let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.